Anthony Richardson, no longer the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. They're traveling to the Minnesota Vikings, who have dropped 2 in a row now. And I think they're certainly fiending for a win here. And they're going to have Joe Flacco as the quarterback on the other side, who's going to try to get in the way of that. Matchup that matters here, Carmen. What do you got?
It's again going to be how this Colts offensive line, which is a great unit, by the way, 64 pressures allowed in pass protection, that's the third fewest. 45 quarterback hurries allowed in pass protection, that's the sixth fewest. 84.2 PFF grade, that's first in the league. Pass blocking grade first, run blocking grade first. This is a great unit.
Yeah.
How do they match up with what Brian Flores likes to do on defense, which is confuse the hell out of these guys? And we've seen it the last 2 weeks where you've seen quarterbacks be able to kind of dissect what they're looking at, who's coming, how much protection they need. Jared Goff was phenomenal at that against the Vikings. And it was just, you need, I feel like, a lot of experience to be able to kind of dissect what this Vikings defense is going to do, because there aren't obvious tells. I don't know if the Lions figured out what those tells possibly could be, but we're going to see. I am very interested to see how then Joe Flacco does as a result of that. But I do think a lot of this comes down to the offensive line picking up certain stunts, figuring out where the pressure is coming from, identifying and setting the protections to the right person. Because I think teams have gotten tripped up by setting their protection to a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, for instance, who is kind of a Swiss Army knife in Brian Flores' defense. And they move him all around. He has all different kinds of assignments, from dropping into coverage to blitzing to just, following running backs, spying quarterbacks. He's got so much stuff. So you can't really rely on setting your protection to a guy like that. And is the line or whoever's in charge of those protection calls going to know that? So I'm really interested to see how that ends up working out against, again, one of the best offensive lines in football.
Yeah, I think that you're totally right there. I mean, Joe Flacco is a totally different style of quarterback than Anthony Richardson, but like Flacco, 52.6, great under pressure. And you hope that offensive line for the Colts is able to stand up to their reputation here against a really good front and a really good defense coordinator in Brian Flores. Because if they're not, it's not like Joe Flacco has really handled pressure better than Anthony Richardson. His passing grade under pressure is barely above it. So maybe he throws hot a little bit better. Like maybe he gets to his receivers a little bit better, a little bit quicker. Maybe you're attacking short and intermediate, since Anthony Richardson's average depth of target was so much further deep down the field. Maybe you want to be a little bit more honed in on what you could do in the short passing game. But I think it all comes down to really how well this offensive line is going to stand up. I also think it's been a little bit quiet for the receivers not named Justin Jefferson over the last couple of weeks. I feel like the receivers were really able to hit the ground running when the season kind of opened up, and Minnesota was able to surprise some teams. It's like, okay, we got better receivers outside of Jefferson than you think we do. I think it's been a little bit more quiet lately. They're going up against a Colts secondary that has been good at times, but quite up and down. Just been very natural to the position. I think Jalen Jones has played well at times, struggled at times. Sam Womack has played well at times, struggled at times. He's gone through injury. Kenny Moore's kind of the same way. The secondary, the deep safeties is sort of the same way. So which version of the Colts secondary are we going to get this week? But I do feel like we're going to get a really good version of the Vikings pass catchers. And so they kind of got to be on their P's and Q's. That's a matchup that I'm watching as well. I think the offensive line, defensive line, the Colts and Vikings, the Colts offensive line, Vikings defensive line is the main matchup that matters. Yeah. But I do want to shout out Minnesota's wide receivers versus the Colts secondary. I think that's a big one too. My plus factor, though, Michael Pittman Jr. If there's anybody that might be happy about Anthony Richardson getting benched, it feels like it would be Michael Pittman Jr. Because when you look at just the last 3 weeks, 14.8% threat percentage is lowest on the team, despite having the most receiving snaps on the team. Like, Richardson was just not finding him, and he really was not targeting him. And I don't know if it's just because teams are really keying in on Michael Pittman Jr., but he runs the most receiving snaps of any player on the team, and yet he was seeing a lot less targets than he regularly does, normally in that 20% threat percentage rate. And so much less from Michael Pittman Jr. Do we get to see him be a little bit more involved with Richardson now benched and Joe Flacco out there? That's something I'm very curious to see, because Josh Downs has been playing well. A.D. Mitchell has, Alec Pierce has, but Pittman has not been a consistent part of this passing game, and maybe he will be now that there has been a quarterback change. What about you? What do you think? What's the plus factor here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with The with TJ Hawkinson, because it sounds like he's going to be coming back.
I
It,
think he's
there
going
was
to play. I think he's
there
going to
was
play.
there was some hope that maybe he was going to play last week against the Rams, but the short
Right.
week and all that other stuff just didn't really quite work out. But he is on the active roster now, and all signs are pointing to TJ Hawkinson making his debut then in this game. And you were talking about how teams have maybe figured out a little bit of Minnesota's passing options, but now you're going to add the dynamic of TJ Hawkinson into this mix. And I think that teams are a little bit more, I mean, I do not want to speak ill of Johnny Munt. Please believe. Love that guy. He's a cult hero in
All due
Minnesota.
respect, of course, of
All
course.
due respect to Johnny Munt, teams are going to play TJ Hawkinson a little bit differently, and that should take some of the attention. That's why, he worked so well in tandem with a guy like Justin Jefferson, because as a tight end, he was able to take some of the attention off of Justin Jefferson, and then that opened up things for guys like Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, all that other stuff. I fully expect that to happen again, and they have a more formidable rushing attack offensively as well with Aaron Jones now in Minnesota. So this all of a sudden really looks like an absolutely complete offense, and you look at how much Sam Darnold has really internalized the scheme, how much Kevin O'Connell sets him up for success, and how good of a coach and play caller Kevin O'Connell is. I fully expect TJ Hawkinson to mean a lot for this Minnesota offense. And as experienced as Joe Flacco is, I just also don't really see him being able to figure out this Minnesota defense in the way that Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford were the last couple of weeks, because it is still a really tall task. So you're going to be able to limit points there. And I do think that we know this Minnesota offense is capable of scoring points. And TJ Hawkinson is going to be a huge boost in that.